Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on August 4th, 2021 at approximately 12:19 p.m. PST. Well, let's get back on the same track. Carrying on from yesterday in a sense, I like the way that I heard Wayne Gretzky put it one day in a interview, where what he said was, and I'm paraphrasing, but what I heard him say was, you may miss 95% of the shots you take, but you will miss 100% of the ones you don't take. With this in mind, when you have a dream, when you have a goal, okay, and you sit there going, well, gee, I don't know if I can do this. You're right, you don't know. But if you don't even pick up your feet and make the effort, you still won't know. It may be the greatest adventure you could possibly get onto. But if you don't start it, you won't know. Okay. Now, they tell me, many people have told me the hardest step to take is in any journey is the first step. And I'll tell you, it really isn't. It's the hardest one to make the effort to do in a lot of ways, because you got to get up to that point that you go, yeah, I'm going to move forward. But once you've decided you're going to make that step, the first one is the easy one. Just picture a kid when they're learning to walk. Whether it's a human child or an animal child, it doesn't matter. They have to figure out how to stand up, and then they've got to figure out how to walk. Well, the first step is relatively easy. The second one is usually trying to catch your balance from the first one. But the third one is the one that you choose to do. That's the one that decides whether you've said, I've had enough of it, I'm just going to sit down, or I'm going to carry on pushing. Now, whatever your dream in life, whatever your goal, I strongly encourage you to really get off your tail feathers and push through it. Talk to anybody you can to get encouragement, to get some sort of guidance. If you don't know what you're doing, talk to anybody at all. Okay, now I'd love to see a thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to the channel. Okay, because we did return to pass on one message to everybody on the planet. Or for that matter, everybody in existence. And that is that working together, we can make this a better world. Now, if when you're taking a look at the way your life is, if you're not content with it, you're the only one that can actually make an adjustment. And the only time you can do that you can actually act on that decision is right here, right now. Now, if you put it off until tomorrow or next week or next year, it won't matter. At the time you do it, it will still be right here, right now. That's the only time you can make anything happen. Once it's happened, you cannot undo it. Okay. But it doesn't matter what belief structure you use. It doesn't matter what spiritual guide you go to. Compare the guidelines and the philosophies they're presenting to you and ask yourself this. Do they fit inside these three? Be true to yourself first. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Energy out, energy in. Those are the only three laws that I bother paying attention to. Okay, everything else I govern my life around. And this is why I'm here to offer you tools that I know work, because if they apply to my life, I'm using them. If they don't apply to my life, I've got over 80,000 clients under my belt. So I've got a fairly wide personal database, never mind any research that you see out there. I don't research. I do not bother going through and checking what the latest statistics are, on the whole. I mean, I've been telling people for years that the average intelligence of humans is declining. Now, to back that up and do your own research, okay, again, don't just take my word for it. But what I found out about 10 years ago was the average IQ, the average intelligence quotient of humans, was 100 to 130. Okay, now that's great until you realize that this year they came out with a new average point, and the average point in today's world is 85 to 115. Net result, what we can safely conclude, is that the more advanced technology gets, the less people think. Okay, this funny little thing here, calculator. Okay, calculator, computer, call it what you will. The reality is, before these were used, people would think their way through mathematical problems. And I'm just as guilty as the next person. Okay, but the reality of it is that it's things like this that stop people from thinking. Okay, work your brain, you'll find it stays solid or stays more consistent as you get older. Just because you're getting older doesn't mean your brain has to slip. Just like it doesn't mean that your eyes have to collapse. Okay, the reality is you will get older. Okay, that's just plain reality. However, whether you get old or not is entirely up to you. Okay, this is one of the reasons why I've got this neat little list here, is to help me keep things stable, keep things moving in the right direction. No, I don't expect you to read it. Okay, but I keep this handy so that when I come up with an idea, I can write it down and make sure I get to it today. For the most part, that works for me. And if you haven't found a way that works for you, it may be one to work on. And the way it works is this. You start with a sheet of paper right where you're sitting right now, and you write down the first 3 things that come to your mind that you feel are not running properly in your world. Okay, now they can be real simple things. You know, like for instance, my desk isn't totally clear right now. Now I've got a bunch of other things that are listed here, and did I? Yeah, I did check that off. But my office desk is not sorted out yet, so I will have to deal with that. Okay, and yeah, I'm still melting here. I do not entirely understand why, but my temperature is way too high for me. But I live with it. Okay, if something isn't running properly in your life, take a sheet of paper, write down the first 3 things, but remember, keep in mind these 3 things you keep to a 15-minute to half-hour mark. 15-minute to half-hour in length. The reason for that is because 15 minutes to half an hour, you can get something done and you can feel like you actually got something done. Speaking of which, I keep forgetting to transfer the information over onto my big calendar. I'm still very much a dinosaur, so on top of having the normal stuff today, I still keep a physical calendar over on my shelf there that I can write down what I'm working on. Okay. Now, how you mark stuff down is up to you. Okay. But I will tell you, by writing it down, by taking whatever your goal is and putting it on paper, it draws the energy out of the spiritual world into the material world where it can be made manifest. Okay. This is why, at this point, the proofreading and the editing that I'm doing right now, okay, is coming along nicely. Okay. I usually do my best to stay two chapters ahead of a proofreader, so that I can make sure I get all the odds and ends out of the way that need to be done. Right about now, I'm about a chapter and a half ahead. So before the end of the day, I've got to get that finished so we can get on with moving forward. Because with the Yldrbacian Chronicles, which reminds me, do I have that down? No. So, mark that down and make sure I get that done. The Yldrbacian post that I do on my Facebook page. Okay. By keeping that list together, I can go through it all, check off what I need to. Of course, check off takes us back to that neat little, and I'm sure any of you that remember the original Star Trek, you'll remember the guy's name, Chekhov. Totally useless piece of information. Okay. But what I did find out is by writing the goals down, it really helps put things in perspective and make sure they come into balance. Now, from your end, it is simply a question of, are you content with where your life is sitting? Is the energy in your world running properly? Now, I know for an absolute certainty in my world, Not quite the case. Okay, that's why these little things get moved out of the way and into my recycling bin. And again, it boils down to a very simple issue. Yes, I'm doing things while I'm talking to you because, well, that's frankly the way I work. I tell people, multitasking for me is about as simple as it gets. Okay, because for me, doing more than one thing at a time is just plain the way my life has always worked. At least as near as I can figure. But if the energy is not running smoothly in the area where you operate, the odds are your life isn't going to be as content as you'd like. And as you can see, we're just going through our wallet right now. We just got back from lunch. So, one of the things we have to do, and we know this is where we screwed up. When we mentioned a few days back that we had mucked up our financial side of things because we didn't track it properly, we figured out where the problem was. We were tracking it fine, but because we got away from the idea of turning around and actually doing the paperwork as soon as we got home, we ran into a problem. Okay, and we got ahead of ourselves and behind ourselves at the same time, which is kind of cute. So I came to the conclusion that if I was going to correct the path I was on, I was going to have to get back to what works. Okay, get back to the basics. Okay, if you're having trouble, if you're having trouble with making things work in a way that was working, if something's been going well for you and then all of a sudden it starts to tank, take a look at how you used to deal with it. Get back to the basics and start working from the ground up again. There are lots of times, especially if you've gotten into bad habits. In my case, procrastination was the biggest one. I mean, yes, I spent my time doing way too many drugs and way more alcohol than I should have. But that is all behind me. And this is why I tell people, yes, if you are drinking consistently, it's a problem. But there are two types of alcoholics in my opinion. You've got alcoholics, and there's a staggering number of different ways that can be classified. And you've got recovered alcoholics, meaning they no longer have the urge. Okay, if you're in AA, keep going. Okay, Alcoholics Anonymous. Keep going. The support group can be really beneficial in keeping you off the alcohol. Okay, it's not the only way, but it is one of the most effective coping mechanisms. And yes, I call it coping because what they seem to do is they take that alcoholism and they go, okay, you're going to fight this for the rest of your life. But here's something you can do that, granted, you're still dealing with an addiction in a sense, but you're coping with it. Okay, in my case, I never went. I was drinking a 26er a night. Okay, I was drinking a 26er a rye a night without even thinking about it. I now drink once, maybe twice a year. Okay, and that's it. So it'll take me upwards of 10 years to actually finish off a 26-ounce bottle. Even with help, it creates an interesting problem. The biggest problem that you find from everything I'm looking at, and yeah, what I'm doing here is leaving a real quick message that I need to. This is a live recording. Okay, a live recording, in my eyes, is this. I record what I'm doing, I record what I'm saying, but when it's over, when I'm done recording, I simply go back, double check the date, and make sure that I got the date right. Then I post it as is. Okay, and the reason for that is I figure if you run into me on the street, first of all, you're likely to hurt me. But if you meet me on the street, the odds are I talk exactly the same way. Not quite so much with my hands when I'm standing up, but when I'm sitting down, I certainly do. Okay, but you'll find I talk the same way. I back up over my own sentences. I stumble over things, which is why I do not record my own live recording in my own live books. I will get somebody else that is a professional at it, that is trained at it, and that knows how to edit them properly so that hiccups and stumbles can happen. Okay, now from your standpoint, it's just simply a question of whether or not you stay focused on what works for you. Okay, is the energy in your world running in the right way? Lordy, I'm melting here. I'm dang certain of it. Okay, is the energy in your world working the right way? If it is not, it's time to start altering things. It's time to start moving them around so you can actually get what you're aiming at, and that's not going to work. Now, the problem with my eyes healing is this. I've got 20/20 eyesight to read with. Okay, now if you think about it, my standard glasses, it used to be if I take my glasses off, and you see the size of my glasses, well, if I held my glasses right there, I couldn't physically see them. Now, I can hold this standard receipt from a grocery store. I can hold it right there, and I can still read the whole thing. Okay, now this is why I say, as you get older, it does not mean your eyesight has to fail. It doesn't mean it has to get bad. You're taught it's supposed to get bad, and I fail in a lot of those lessons. So from your standpoint, if something isn't working quite the way you'd like it to, really take the time. Okay, you really take the time to look at it, make the modifications that you need to. Okay, the modifications that you require to make your world work better. Like I've got all my stuff worked out here, on this shelf now. Okay, I've got the different drawers are laid out with stuff that I require without creating a problem for myself. Okay, but is it perfect? No, it's always under construction, in case you hadn't noticed. Okay, now one of the neat little things here, and what is this? This is what's called blow this up just a little so I can actually see it. Ironically enough, that actually works for me. So from my standpoint, like I'm looking at this and going, this is what I mean by if you've got a chore. Now here's the thing. Procrastination, the only thing it's ever done for anybody is delay them getting something accomplished. That's all it's ever done. In my eyes, that's not exactly effective. Okay, so from that standpoint, take a look at what you're doing and go, okay, this needs to be done. Now, when does this require doing? Well, right here, right now. You've already seen that it is required. Postponing it will not do you any good, and it won't get you any further ahead. It also will not actually make your life run smoothly if you keep postponing it. It just isn't going to work that way. Okay, the hard part from your end is believing that you actually have control over it. Okay, the difficult part is that any way you look at it, if you don't do something, see, you can take all the ideas in the world and you can say they're great ideas, but if you never do anything with them, you're not going to actually get very far. Because the best tools in the world are absolutely useless if you do not, they are absolutely useless if you do not pick the tools up. This is why I say the tools that I personally offer are the same ones that I personally use. If they apply to my life, I'm using them. If they don't, I've got about 80,000 clients under my belt that actually help with that. Okay, that have seen them work well enough to know that I can know that they are, and apparently this isn't working. I keep hitting the wrong button, so we're just going to postpone that for a minute. Mathematics and talking, not necessarily a good idea. But when you take a look at the way your life is, the whole issue is this. You've probably been taught to believe that moving forward to success, the problem with it is you've got to fear it. What happens if you end up with all this excess money? You're used to struggling, and all of a sudden you get everything working properly. What happens? Well, what ends up happening is pretty simple. You all of a sudden don't have that issue of You don't have the issue of the stress of where's my next paycheck coming from? Where is my, when am I getting my next meal? Am I going to be able to take my rent and have it paid? Well, I will tell you this. I was asking somebody the other day how they keep their stress level low, and their answer was simple. They said because they always are very much on top of what they're doing, very aware of where their finances are, they don't worry about them as much. Okay, if you're paying attention to what you're doing, all of that tracking, all of that paying attention to it will absolutely help. The problem is, of course, if you believe that it won't. Whether you believe it'll help or you believe it won't, either way you'll prove yourself right. Okay, now the thing is, when we take a look at where your life is sitting, get the energy moving in the right direction, you'll find things actually work out quite nicely for you. See, if I take a look at where my life is, I'm going, okay, I got this whack of money in when my parents unfortunately passed away. I took all that money, most of it went into investments and what have you, so that I have money to retire on. Now, frankly, I'm currently working on writing multiple books, and that's where I desire my living income to come from, not from the estate. I'm not about to sit back and wait for the estate to work out. Okay, because in my eyes, for the estate to build money, in my eyes, yeah, the money from the estate was really helpful, but I still have to do my part. Now, I took the majority of that money and invested it. The rest I got out of debt, but I didn't correct my thinking. Thus far, I finally figured out what I had done wrong as far as thinking went. And I do believe at this point that I've actually corrected that problem. Now it's just a question of making absolutely certain that I follow through with what I require. I do not believe I did that all over again. It's kind of funny the way I'm doing that. On the one hand, everything is tickety boo. On the other hand, I do have my problems. The biggest catch here is taking a look at that and making sure that I do it the right way, which that would solve that. There we go. Now that we're on the right page, we can actually do things in the right order. This is where I run into snags on occasion, is trying to pay attention to what I'm doing and still turning around and making miscalculations on occasion. However, with that in mind, okay, you stay with it. If you've started to change things, you've been doing something your entire life. Okay, now I heard somebody the other day. They have certain hiccups in their life. Now, like I've mentioned before, at 20 months old, I ended up being diagnosed with epilepsy. Now, I could use that as an excuse to get everything scrambled. And does it explain some of it? Absolutely. But the reality is, I can look at it and go, oh, woe is me, I'm an epileptic, therefore I need a lot of handouts. I look at it and go, okay, woe is me, I was an epileptic, and so what? I just have to pay attention to certain things. Stress level is a real big one. But I do not commend people, I do not recommend people use their hiccup as an excuse for anything. Absolutely acknowledge the fact you have one. Okay, like it would be foolhardy for me to go, I see perfectly enough to drive, and then get into a car and drive. My eyes don't work as well as I'd like them to. They work fine for reading. Okay, the reason I keep them on right now is this. My eyesight works great for reading, which means here's the keyboard right here. If I take this receipt and hold it right here, I can see it. But the computer screen is at that funny point where I can't quite see what I'm looking for. So I have to look at the other side of it. You know, and again, this is a question of money doesn't care what you're buying, what you're doing. It doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't care at all. All the money does is it looks at it and goes, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Whether you're in a good mood or a bad mood, if you've made a decent investment and decent use of your money, it will make money for you. It will work. You don't have to be in a good mood. You don't even have to be totally aware of what it's doing if you find people that you can trust. Now, of course, I leave my investments to my bank. They're the people that are trained for it, not me. Okay, so I don't bother with that side of it. I just go, okay, make it happen. Fortunately, my bank, the one I work with, is working well for me. It does, the same branch does not work well for everybody. But what I do know is you turn to the people that you find are actually helping. Okay, they're doing something right by you, and you let them deal with what you can. As the saying goes, no man is an island unto themselves. And the real big factor here is to remember, fearing changes, fearing unfamiliar territory, this is normal. Giving into that fear and giving yourself the excuse, I'm afraid of it, or I'm not afraid, I'm tough. Okay, and going, I'm not doing that because of whatever reason. You're the only one on the planet that can be successful for you. You're the only one in existence. Even if you wholeheartedly believe in a spiritual guide, okay, in a god, in a devil, in a demon, in whatever you are turning to for your spiritual support, even they do not have the ability to be successful for you. You're still the one that's going to have to do the work. And to that end, I strongly encourage you to get an idea in your head of what you're not content with and stand up and do something with it. Okay, right here, right now. Everything in existence is in the exact same boat. They can only act on their desires right here, right now. Now, with that in mind, I'll be a little more organized tomorrow, I hope. But we are hitting the half-hour mark, and that said, absolutely, until we talk again, which will be tomorrow sometime, take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.